Fear Not, Episode 64. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today, you and I are going to be joined by Melanie Greenberg. Hello, Melanie. How are you today?
Hello, Billy. I'm good.
Are you ready to fear not today?
I certainly am.
Melanie is a practicing psychologist, author, speaker, and coach with more than 20 years of professional experience. She's an expert at managing stress in careers, relationships, and health using proven techniques from neuroscience, mindfulness, and positive psychology. Originally from South Africa, Melanie has an entrepreneurial spirit and a passion for psychological growth and healing. She loves to challenge, inspire, and motivate. Melanie has a busy clinical and coach practice in Mill Valley, California, where she sees individuals and couples. She is the author of The Stress-Proof Brain, which is an Amazon bestseller in the neuropsychology, stress management, and health section. She writes the popular Mindful Self-Express blog for Psychology Today, which has 8 million page views. A popular media expert, she's been featured on CNN, Forbes, Inc., Business Insider, BBC Radio, ABC News, Yahoo, AOL, CNN, and Lifehacker. She's also been in Self, Redbook, Women's Health, Men's Health, Fitness Magazine, Women's Day, Marie Claire, and Psychologies. Marie, can you take a few moments to fill in the gaps and maybe also give us a brief glimpse of your personal life, please?
Sure. So I came to the US at the age of 26. I was born in South Africa, and it was towards the end of the apartheid era. So at the time that I came to the US, it was kind of a very chaotic time in South Africa. I came to graduate school at Stony Brook University on the East Coast, and there I met my husband and continued doing my PhD, and then moved out to San Diego after graduate school, and got a job as a professor at Alliant International University. And I did that for a while, more than a decade. And then my husband had a big job change, and I decided to follow him to the Bay Area and did a complete 180 and opened a clinical practice. I also had a young daughter at the time. She was in third grade at the time. So that seemed like a better fit with being a mom. And then I've built up my practice from the ground up. And I've also, from the ground up, figured out how to get an agent and a book contract and become an author as well, which is very exciting. It's taken a while to get there.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting journey, and thank you for sharing. Melanie, would you also share with us today one of the biggest fears that you've had to face?
Sure. So I think the biggest fear in my life is when I came to the US alone at the age of 26 from South Africa. I had been an exchange student to the US when I was 17, so that was scary too. But this was more scary just because, grad school was a long time. It was a commitment of at least 5 years. I left everything that was familiar to me. I think I knew 2 people in the US and a few more from exchange student, but I hadn't kept up that much. And, I left everything familiar, all my friends, all my family, and just the way of life that I knew. And so that was very scary getting on that plane. I remember having a lot of, thoughts about whether I was doing the right thing, whether I could manage this. But I was really excited to pursue the dream of going to graduate school. If I had qualified in psychology in South Africa, I couldn't use it anywhere else. And I just remember arriving in JFK, John F. Kennedy Airport. It's such a huge airport, just arriving by myself after 24 hours of traveling. and having to find my way to Long Island, and it was terrifying. And how I overcame it, I think slowly with time. Um, I had to learn to drive a car on the other side of the road because we drove on the left-hand side, and that was scary. Um, I think being in a program with other people who were also new from other parts of the country really helped. Um, and then when I thought everybody would be, so brilliant, and I was just this person from South Africa, but I actually did found that I knew as much as anybody else. That helped. And then, of course, making friends over time.
What do you do currently whenever you're faced with a situation where fear presents itself?
So there's a couple things I do. One of the things is that I remind myself of all the difficult challenges I have already overcome, because I think I am a person that's overcome a lot of challenges and a lot of transitions, and taken risks and put myself in difficult situations, and somehow I always end up on my feet even if I go through a difficult period. So just reminding myself of that, over time I've built confidence that I'm a person who can figure it out, and that I'm strong, and even if I don't feel strong at the moment. And so I reinforce the idea of myself as courageous. And then I also use mindfulness. And mindfulness is both a meditation practice, and it's just an attitude to life where you gain some distance from your fear. You realize that even though you're feeling the fear right then, you are not that fear. You're larger than that. And, you can breathe, you can calm it down, and you can have a philosophy of the fear as just being something that's passing through you. It's just a transient thing, so it doesn't have to define you as much.
Surely you must have come across some pretty great resources that have helped you as you've grown and learned how to deal with fear. Would you mind sharing some of those with us today?
Sure. So there's a bunch of apps out there that you can use on your phone. Headspace is a good website to go to look into that. And Happify is an app that has lots of resources to program happiness and gratitude and mindfulness into your life every day. And I've also been influenced a lot by books and writers. The very first book I read when I was still in South Africa as a teenager was called The Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts. And that talked about how grasping for security makes you insecure, because life is not security. Life is change. It's just inevitable. We all age and we all get sick. And so there's a wisdom in being able to accept insecurity and learning and working. It's a lifelong journey, I think. I've also the writings of Eckhart Tolle, who's a mindfulness writer and philosopher. He's got a book, A New Earth. And one thing I like is the phrase, whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it. Always work with it, not against it. This will magically transform your whole life. So I think the philosophy of this book of just, grab onto the present and you just go with it has been really big for me. And then there's a book called The Happiness Trap, which is by Russ Newman, and it's from acceptance and commitment therapy. And the philosophy there is about be willing to be uncomfortable. So in other words, if you want something really badly, you have to go after it. And there's no way around feeling discomfort. But if you can see the discomfort as something you've chosen to get to a certain goal, or because you're letting your core values lead you, then it can transform that and it can help you through the discomfort.
Yeah, those all sound really amazing, and thank you so much for sharing those.
Sure.
Are you ready for the speed round?
I am, yeah.
Melanie, what person, whether they're fiction or real, has made the most impact on your life?
Well, coming from South Africa, I think Nelson Mandela, the story of Nelson Mandela, has made biggest impact, because he was a political prisoner for many years. He was isolated on an island, locked up, doing hard labor, kind of with hard stones that he had to break up, fed very poorly, just fed cornmeal. His house was bulldozed, because he stood up to the government with apartheid, I think you say. He's had all this suffering, and he was really badly treated, and his family was badly treated. His books were burned. And yet he never hated, and he never lost hope. And even with the very harsh times, he never lost hope in his philosophy, that what he was doing was right, that you had to stand up against discrimination. And he was a leader of his people, and he felt a loyalty to his people. But especially that he didn't hate. So when he came out and he was made president, he introduced a reconciliation commission and forgiveness commission, that anybody who had done crimes under the apartheid government, who could confessed, could be forgiven as long as they did a full confession. And I think that was wonderful for the country. There would have been a lot of bloodshed, a lot more bloodshed, had he not done that. And it was an example to everybody.
If you could instantly change one thing in the world, what's that change going to be?
For me, it would be get rid of human cruelty. I think human cruelty causes the most suffering for us. I remember, watching on TV ISIS and chopping people's heads off. And, it's just horrifying the extent to which people can be cruel and inhuman to each other. And it affects people for many, many generations. It's not only those people, but it's all their family members. And it's the future generations who are affected by those family members having PTSD. And so it's a lifelong, I think, it's mental suffering, the idea that people can be so cruel and not care. So that's what I would get rid of.
What's your biggest weakness?
So my biggest weakness, I think, is that a little bit of laziness, that I'm not always completely disciplined and consistent. And so sometimes I like to sleep a bit late, or sometimes I'll get caught up in something and not get to my work in time. But I manage it. I have a lifestyle where there's a lot more flexibility. And being a writer, certainly you can work around that. But I think, if I was completely consistent and completely productive all the time, I think that, imagine what I would accomplish. But then I think I'm a creative person as well. And sometimes there's just different kinds of people. And I try to be as productive as I can be.
What's your biggest strength?
I think my biggest strength is resilience. It's gotten me through difficult times. Just this kind of grit, this kind of keep going, don't give up hope. You'll get there. And I think I got some of it from my father. My father was a self-made man and grew up very, very poor, that the family could barely afford soccer boots, or couldn't afford soccer boots. He had a single mom. And he was self-made in terms of building businesses. And in South Africa, it was a little bit easier, but he ended up become very comfortable in South Africa. And so I got that example from him, that if you work hard enough, if you just believe in yourself and work hard enough, and can be tough in certain ways, mentally tough, that you can get through very, very difficult things and, have a dream to create a better life.
If you could only have one book to read, what's that book going to be?
So that's a hard one. I did speak about the New Earth, and I'm trying to think. I think it's that one, and The Happiness Trap, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And I would read my own book. The book is called The Stress-Proof Brain, and it just came out in February. And it's got a summary of all the things you can do to make your brain more resilient and more able to manage stress. A lot of it is from my own life experience. A lot of it's from my scientific knowledge as a professor about how stress occurs in the brain and body, and what we do and how the stress response works. And then a lot of it is from my clinical experience. I've been honored to be able to work with so many clients who are dealing with stress.
And do you have a favorite sound?
I like Van Morrison. I like some of his songs and hymns to the silence in particular. I find some of his music just very relaxing on a kind of organic level, and it's almost meditative. And also, there's a person called Snaitam Kaur, Kaur, and she does kind of Sanskrit Kundalini yoga chanting. And it's in Sanskrit in a different language, but there's something about the chanting and the pitch and it sounds like an earth mother, and it's very rhythmic, and I feel like physiologically it's very relaxing.
Melanie, if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So my website at the moment is Dr. Melanie Greenberg, Melanie Green, Berg, .biz, biz. But I'm actually building a new website called drmelaniegreenberg.com that should be up in a month. So and if you go to Biz, it'll redirect you anyway. I also have a blog on Psychology Today called The Mindful Self-Express, The Mindful Self-Express. And you could go to Amazon to the book page for The Stress-Proof Brain.
And what parting advice would you like to leave with us today?
So I think never give up hope. Never let yourself get completely defeated. If you can't go through something, there's always a way around. And have patience, because life has its ups and downs, and sometimes there are cycles that you can't fight. There are periods in life when whatever you try, whatever you do, you won't necessarily succeed. But if you just keep on going, eventually you'll get to a point where that changes, and you'll get your opportunity. And when your opportunity comes, just go for it, grab it, be confident.
That's great advice, and thank you so much for that. And I also want to let everyone know, too, that Melanie has generously donated a copy of her book, The Stress-Proof Brain, which we'll be giving away. So if you'd like an opportunity to win that book, visit the giveaways page at livingbeyondyourfears.com to submit your free entry form today. There are multiple ways for you to enter, and just so you know, the competition is only for 7 days, so don't forget to enter today. Melanie, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and your wisdom. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a great opportunity, and I'm really happy to come on your show.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.